Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are most welcome to this memorial lecture, and we thank you for being in time. We are ready to begin, and I'm happy that most of the key people that we need for this function are here. I can see our keynote speaker is already here. I can see many members of the civil society. They are already here, especially those who have closely worked with the late, who have closely worked with the late Gariyo. And the members of the family are also here. It is customary for Ugandans not all of them be on time. We believe others will be joining in one by one. So what we need to do is to start on time as scheduled. We have the 30 minutes of arrival and registration, so the 30 minutes are over. At 2:30 sharp, we wanted to be beginning. We have a program which is not very lengthy. I hope everybody has got a copy, but that's in case. 2:30 to 2:45, we have an opening prayer, and this will be by Gariyo. Then we get welcome remarks from the family of Gariyo, and then the opening remarks from this center where we are. Then at 3:10 sharp, we shall invite the keynote speaker to give us his address. I'll be handling this function, moderating the function with Mr. Sewachi Yanga. So at some point, you'll excuse me, I have another small engagement I will exit, then he will take over. Then I join you after about 45 minutes. Now, this is a memorial lecture. We know we have missed Gariyo, but don't expect people to be talking about how they have lost him, how they have missed him, and even invoking tears. We are going to avoid that. We are basically talking about his contribution to civil society in the development of this country, the legacy he has left behind, the things he stood for, and let's compare the time that he was at the head of civil society advocacy and now, are the issues he used to articulate or advocate on still obtaining, and if they are, what is happening? Is the fire still burning? Those are the issues we want to be discussing. And I thank the organizers for this idea, because this is what immortalizes a person. When somebody has contributed to society and he exits, at least what he has done should continue to work even in his absence. So that's what we are trying to review. The issues he uses to stand for in the transparency, accountability, and good governance in this country. And so the lecture will basically be to discuss the impact and influence of the civil society, impact and influence in shaping democratic governance in Uganda, and also to reflect on the challenges civil society is facing and the opportunities it has shaped democratic governance in Uganda. These are they rotate around the issues he used to work on. There are so many that he worked on. Those who worked with him, you remember, issues of debt. He was very outspoken about it. budgeting. Mr. Julius Mukunda was a very, very close partner in that, and others. So that is why we are here, and we are going to be discussing specifically those issues, not the personal laws, plight that we may have had after his departure. Yeah, so Mr. Sewachiyanga, you're welcome. So I would like to invite Rona Gariyo to give us an opening prayer.
Let's humble ourselves and pray. Father, we thank you so much for gathering us here for this wonderful day. We thank you, Lord, for Mr. Gariyo. We thank you, Lord, for enabling us to gather here to memorialize him, to speak about his work, to talk about how much of a contribution he made in his career. Lord, we don't take it for granted that you've given us a place to host us, you've given us family, you've given us colleagues to join us in this wonderful experience, Lord, and we just pray that you will be with us. Help us to do him justice. Help us to have some comfort knowing that what we are doing today is what he would have been so proud to know, that we are proud of him, that, Lord, you'll help us to have that sense of comfort, that we know that we are doing him justice. We also pray for our panelists. We pray for our keynote speaker. We pray, Lord, that you will give them the right words to say, that each and every person in this place will be greatly impacted by the discussion that we're going to have today, that those who might have lost steam in the advocacy, in the campaigning, and in all that, oh God, that, Father, they will gather some steam from the discussion today. May we all leave this place energized to do what we do with a passion, to advocate for better governance, to advocate for better democracy, to advocate, oh God, for all the things that Mr. Gariyo was passionate about and all the things he stood for. We welcome your Holy Spirit here with us today. In Jesus' name I've prayed. Amen.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've also witnessed the presence of our panelists, because we shall have a panel discussion. Jane Narunga is already here. That is County Director Siatini. Ms. Modi Mujisha, Director Quest for Development Concert Limited. She's also here. And the one I had mentioned earlier, Julius Mukunda, Executive Director, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, is also here. Thank you so much for being here in time. Now, let's have a word from the family. By Neri Businje Mujisha Gariyo.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. We are trying to build some momentum because we didn't want to be a very sad event. I stand here. We don't want it to be a sad event. We've spent a bit of time preparing this event and we are waiting for other people to join us. But one thing I knew about Daddy was that he was a stickler for time. So we are kind of we have adapted to that policy. So I'm going to very quickly just share a few remarks on behalf of our family. Apologies, my mom should have been here, but she took a trip, a trip she has been planning for a long time. And it just kept changing. The itinerary kept changing. And initially, actually, today was supposed to happen. This event was supposed to happen on 18th. We pushed it to 19th. And so when the time her itinerary changed again, we said, now we can't change any further. Already we had communicated. So she said, it's fine. So I'm sure wherever she is, she'll see it online. So good afternoon once again. I tried to write down because I didn't want to forget. So we're really honored to host you today. It has been a long time coming. We started talking about this event towards the end of last year. Yeah, I tried, yeah, their joy. Yeah, it's been 12 months. Yeah. So when we, apologies, I tried to rehearse and make sure. So when we conceived this idea towards the end of last year, we were thinking, how do we pull it off? Because there was just so much that was happening, and at that time things were still fresh, and so we didn't want to come and then it's just like any other funeral service, you know, where everyone is sad. So we needed to build some time. And so a couple of people I consulted even said, you know, let's wait for 12 months and then, you know, we can do this event. And we really wanted it to be a celebration of his legacy, and also the things that he had really done during his active years. And so it was it was one of those things that we really had at the heart, as you know, along with my sisters and of course my mom. And so when we started consult, we said, okay, we wait for the 1 year anniversary. He passed away on 8th May. So this month is particularly very sentimental for us. So when we started consulting a couple of people, one of the people they told us to consult was Mr. Sewa Chirianga. They said, if you want this event to happen, talk to Richard. So I don't know, maybe everyone should talk to him when they want events like this to happen. But we sought guidance from him, and he was really welcoming. I remember the first call I made towards the end of this year. I gave him a call. He said, yes, we should do it. And so his support was really invaluable. We began to plan, reached out to a number of organizations. We had, I think, about 2 meetings on Zoom. These days, people prefer, let me get some tissue. Some people prefer online meetings these days. And so we started to talk about how the event should look like. So I really want to take this opportunity, and please, if you could indulge me, just to really appreciate a couple of people, because we really had a very big idea, and people are busy, so really getting people to take an afternoon off on such a day, this was going to be a bit of a trick. But I just really want to thank a couple of organizations and a couple of individuals. First, of course, to thank Richard for taking time to accept the big idea that we had and really help us think through it. I bothered him a lot with phone calls, emails, text, WhatsApp messages. And he really, you know, was really welcoming. And also, obviously, Center for Basic Research. There is something about this place. I don't know, I never interacted with Center for Basic Research a lot like I have done while we were preparing this lecture. And yet this is where Daddy started his formative work, his very initial foundational research work and all that. In fact, today, Dr. Mereza gave us a file to see some documents that letters used to write. So those days there were no emails. So there was a letter to Professor Mabdani, dear Mahmoud. I arrived in the UK, and so it was a letter, and I was thinking, wow. So there are a series of letters about stipend. Please pay my stipend of this month. I have some personal issues. So we're looking at the dates, and we're like, one of you was born around this time. So he was writing to get some money because you were born. I think the letter was like 30th August. Kemi was born like on 7th. So we're like, this letter must have been in response to you coming. So he gave us, it was so interesting. And he said, no, you're not taking it. We're keeping, this is our document. So there were a series of letters about scholarships, where he was accepted. He was writing to the university. And there is somewhere where he was supposed to do a research paper and he delayed. I think there were warning letters from the organization, and they were saying, you know, if you don't receive it, this is, and I was like, Daddy, to be the one not delivering on work. So it was so interesting. I was telling Dr. Mereza, because he came from a very long trip, and I was telling him, I wish you could just stay for a few minutes and tell us, because the things you're telling us, we didn't know about our dad, right? So we knew a different person because he was telling us how he made them buy cars. There was a UXT we had those days. And so he made them buy cars. He used to do a lot of fun. And like, but that's not the father we knew. For us, everything was, you either did what, or this, or not, chiboko, what. We've told those stories. He was so tough with us. So it's a different side of him that we didn't know. So yeah, so really thank you, Center for Basic Research. They said we will host it, and they have really helped us pull this off. To the team behind there, Charlotte and the team, thank you very much. There are just a couple of organizations I'll quickly point out that helped us also just think through this lecture and just really put all these ideas together, and the executive directors were on those. So imagine me, the small Nelly, convening a meeting of the executive directors. I was like, who am I? So I was in touch with Mr. Julius Mukunda, Miss Jen Nalunga, Mr. George Lugalambi, Mr. Patrick Tumwevaze. So, and they would join the Zoom call and say, no, I think we should do this up, we should go this way, this approach. No, the program, no, I think the speakers, we should, and then I had to, pick it up, and there was a lot of motivation. And they were like, we are behind you, we are supportive, this has to happen. So thank you so much for partnering with us and for your contributions. I learned a lot of fundraising skills working in civil society. And for a long time at Siatini, Jen would tell you, this is your thing, you look for the money and you do it. So we said, okay, the lecture is ours, we have to look for the resources. So, but yeah, those are fundraising skills we picked up, but they've contributed immensely, not just financially, but just getting us together for this. So I thank you very, very much. And of course, everybody who was working behind the scenes, our mom. I mean, at some point we had to separate the conversation from her, otherwise it was going to become too much. So we're having the conversation on another side. Should just get updates after decisions were made. So wherever she is, I'm sure she's very proud. Of course, my sisters, my husband, we had a small subcommittee of sorts. And we really tried to make this happen. And so many other people. There is Herbert, who's not here, from Siatini. Very handy and savvy with comms and everything, so he really helped out a lot. But obviously, I'm just thanking even just the organizations that contributed, but just the panel itself that we set up. We really appreciate. Lastly, I'd like to appreciate Mr. Arthur LaRocque, Secretary General of ActionAid International, our keynote speaker. I remember when we were discussing in one of those Zoom meetings and we were saying, okay, who should speak, who should? My heart really was towards just if we could find Mr. LaRocque to speak, because I felt like he understood the conversation that we're going to have, and I think the team felt that he would deliver that very well. But when I wrote him, because I know he doesn't live here, when I wrote him, I kept thinking, I wish only maybe he might be around. You never know. Someone else could have invited him, and we piggyback on that trip. So when I wrote to him, he immediately, in fact, when I saw the email pop up, I was thinking, is it a yes or a no? And then he said, I am going to come, and don't worry about my costs, I'll sort out myself. So he was really intentional. Then he asked for his writings. In fact, when he asked me for Dad's writings, I was like, okay, because we knew a couple of them, but let me tell you, that process revealed so much for us. It really did. There are things he wrote about, and I'm like, Kale, these things we are going through the same things now, and he wrote about them 10, 20 years ago. And then the other day, there is a document Mr. Tumwevaze shared, and there was a statement he wrote to the speaker in 2006. I said, for sure, if we write this statement now, they are going to arrest. They will arrest us. Because the way he wrote to the speaker, not even me, because these days the speakers are very sensitive, so you find yourself in jail. But he said so many things, I was like, he didn't fear. He was saying it as it was. So, but thank you so much, Arthur, for really being intentional about, and really, I could feel that you were really, really excited about speaking at this event. So just to conclude, it has really been revealing. Especially there are things that we knew about him, but we didn't know to the extent that we've seen over the last couple of months. Even just looking at his writings, there's one particular one that's here. And even when we're talking to the CBR staff, you find it behind there. You just go to the library, it says, journal this, number this. Yes, it's here, number this. So it was really heartwarming and also inspirational, especially for me who is in the civil society world. I was just inspired. I was like, wow, yeah, he did a lot. And perhaps maybe we didn't see it as much as possible, but we're really excited as far as he accomplished, as much as he accomplished, we're really excited towards his illness, and the times that he was really inactive. I think he would have loved to see, and we're talking about it with my sister, I think he would have loved to see just us appreciate him. But we really wanted to do this, and I know he's happy and smiling wherever he is. So thank you very much. Thank you, I've spoken.
Thank you so much. I think that one has set the tone. Since they couldn't break down, nobody will break down. Yes, I have been reminded that I didn't introduce myself. When I greeted everybody, it's like everybody knows me and I know them, so I didn't take it seriously. But I've noted that there are some people who may not know me or who may have forgotten my names in full. My name is Arthur Mpeirwe. I'm an advocate in private practice and also a consultant, especially on intellectual property rights and human rights. I have worked in civil society, that's why I know most of the people around. And I closely worked with the late. I used to provide consultancy services to UDN, and I also learned a lot. I could share really quite a lot, but I'm not going to. Yeah, so that is me. Now, going back to the program, would like to invite the Executive Director, Center for Basic Research, to give us the opening remarks. You can see the other one was opening prayer. Then we had welcome remarks. Now these are opening remarks. And he will take the honor to go ahead and invite the keynote speaker after. Yes, thank you. You're welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Sewakirianga, and I'm not the Executive Director of Center for Basic Research. I have to make that clear. I'm standing in for Frank, who, in this research world, it's a complicated world. He came from Karamoja, arrived at 2 a.m. So he said, the way I look, people will think that I am mourning instead of celebrating Zai. So let me go home and you at least say something on his behalf. So, but he certainly was very excited about this event. As Nelly said, for me, when they told me this is a civil society leader, for many years I spent myself, I was a civil society leader, and I thought it's just right and fitting for us to do something. I know that in civil society, I think we haven't had that much of time to celebrate each other. We usually, maybe meet in retreats and programmatic kinds of engagements. But to celebrate each other, to celebrate the life of colleagues, I think is something that we have been missing. And probably it's also something that is there in the country. You don't have people spending time or investing in celebrating the work of different people. But clearly for Zai, even before I read this statement from Frank, at least let me say something for myself. Zai was one of those people who was deeply inspirational. I mean, for him, the thing I liked about him was the way he used to tell donors off. Zai would refuse money, not because he doesn't have it, but because he doesn't agree with you in principle. He would tell them, please get out of my office. I don't need this money because what you are saying doesn't. And he would do that many times. And what was funny is that many of them would come back and then work with him. So in a sense, his principled nature is something that for me, I feel needs to be cherished. In this place, I was a very, junior researcher. Well, I've been associated with CBR for many years, since 1998. So, but for Zai, the kind of things he would say is he wouldn't like, when you write, you say you have to write and you have to show that you have prepared what you are doing. Don't write things that don't make sense. Don't copy and paste work. So he had these kinds of and he would tell you on your face, because for him he would say, is it Mchiga or whatever? And they say, I'll tell you the way it is. And many, people sort of, learned to like him because of that. And the other thing which he did also is the passion he had for his work. That little place on the corner there where I sit, he used to work there until midnight. And with no car, walk home from Kololo, or even until, the kind of selfless investment he would put in his work. I mean, you wouldn't take it lightly. So for me, I think that it was really an honor for us to have this event, even if we are not hundreds and hundreds of people. I think it's an honor that we are able to come together and celebrate a life of a person who has impacted this country in many ways. Impacted this country. I mean, some people don't know that some of the early work on media and citizenship was done by him. There's one of the working papers here. He really was predicting the contradictions that you see now in media and how it relates to the state. And when you read that paper, I think I should invite you to do so. You actually see that this media, the fact that right now you have a media that is co-opted, that sort of is commercialized, is something he actually thought about and wrote about, looking at the trends and showing how this would happen. When he started the work on debt, and they started, because he actually formed the Uganda Debt Network from here. One of the things he was arguing was that if we do not manage how we deal with public expenditure, this country will go down in a very dangerous way. As we speak today, you ask Mukunda that how much do we have? 52 trillion shillings? Of that, how much is going in debt servicing and wage? Half of it. So by the time you finish everything, we don't have money to do development work. So the reason I'm saying this is because he saw this crisis and he was saying debt relief is important, because at that time they were coming through this by saying, let's have debt relief for Uganda. But he also saw this crisis and saying, no, let's do something about public expenditure and how it's looked like in the country. And because it's something we also have to celebrate is even that UDN, which he formed, is still a strong organization. I can tell you without fear of contradiction, that there are many organizations, when the founder leaves, the organization dies. You don't hear about it again. So to see that, places like UDN are still there, I think is also testimony to the fact that the kinds of agendas that he was working on were important. But now that's the problem of giving somebody someone's speech when that somebody also has something to say. So what Frank wrote here is that, of course, Zai was very much, and welcome Professor Aichide Josephine. At some point, you'll have to ask her to speak, because for her, she was even much more engaged. They studied together for postgraduate at some point. I think it may be helpful to hear one or two stories. You know, in other places other than the keynote, you give people a chance to tell stories about people as a way of celebrating. So hopefully the MC has left, but hopefully we shall find space for that. But Zai was one of the first cohorts of researchers who joined Center for Basic Research in 1987. And as one of the first cohorts, they were all students of Professor Mahmoud Mamdani, whom you all may know about. And, you know, here at the Center for Basic Research, he did really, really contribute immensely. Between 1998 September to June 1989, he attended Queen's College, the University of Cambridge in the UK, and pursued development studies diploma. And when he returned, he continued with his research work. And he encouraged many people to really be part of this whole research tradition. And he's, you know, he was really a proud alumni of all those places that he went to, including the, you know, University of Cambridge. And as one of the pioneers, really, one of the things they did was to encourage all the younger researchers to understand the value of research, the value of investing in knowledge production, and how that, you know, is an important part of dealing with life. He has told you that other than encouraging people to do research, he also encourages people to have, you know, more meaningful, progressive, you know, lifestyles, including having. They have talked about the UXT 711, which, you know, encouraged everybody else to sort of buy something. He also did some other studies, an MPhil in development studies at the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague in 1993 to 94. And so his really intellectual proficiency is something that we all celebrate. Even as I said, the work that he did in coordinating and founding the Uganda Debt Network, I think was something that was instrumental then, but is still instrumental now. While at that time it, you know, looked at Uganda as a heavily indebted poor country that needed to be helped, but I think it has done more than that. So, you know, he published several working papers, and clearly for us, that is still a very important thing. And you know, surprisingly, there are many people who still want to read that. They are still in high demand, those working papers, both locally and internationally. Because, you know, at CBR here, you have all kinds of people, you know, coming in, PhD students, who want to read about Uganda in different ways, and they find his work really, really very helpful. So really for Zai, this is his second, well, we don't know if it is this, because before he got home, he used to be here as a bachelor. So it must be his first home, but we should say second home because he has a home and a family. But this is his second home that we know, and we celebrate that he had touched the lives of many researchers and has done a lot for all of us. And of course, all of us would stay indebted to his intellectual investment and what he did for us. And you know, we continue to say, let him rest in peace and rest in power. But that is the statement with a few additions from myself from the Center for Basic Research. So right now, I will then invite Arthur. Arthur LaRocque is the Secretary General of the Action Aid International. That means he manages, I don't know, 100 offices all over the world. So we are also proud that we have, you know, somebody who is Ugandan leading. You know, some of us who travel, to find a Ugandan leading a global, it was always a problem. So when we have a colleague who is leading a global process like that, we are always honored. So Arthur, we want, of course, to celebrate Zai, but also to welcome you and celebrate you because we have never seen you since you became Secretary General. We didn't know if you have a bodyguard these days or you changed the way you work. You know, but I worked with Arthur at the Uganda National NGO Forum for a long time. So we at least for me, it's a special honor and pride to know that one of my colleagues is heading a big organization. So Arthur, you are welcome to give the keynote, and then we move on with the rest of the program. Thank you, colleagues, for listening. Where you stand is where I don't know. Do you need a podium? Yes. Okay. Then we will.
Okay, thanks a lot for this incredible opportunity. I think Nelly has already explained how I got here. I didn't know that Julius, Patrick, and others had also endorsed my presence. It's a really deep honor. When I saw Nelly's email, even before I finished, I just said yes. Then I read the details later. Reason was I missed Zai's funeral and his last days because I've been based in Nairobi for the last 6 years. So at whatever cost, I was going to come. So I'm really happy to be here. Now, all of you have kept time, so I really need to struggle. I have lots of original notes. And if there are some errors here, no problem. I have senior people who are my bosses before, like Richard, like Maud, Jane. They might have correct information because as you can see, I was just writing these things from my head. But I will try to tell a story of Zai and his impact. And like my namesake, the moderator who started said, it's really a celebration. Now, the title of my keynote is The Unfinished Business, Civil Society, Democratic Governance, and the Legacy of Zai Gariyo. For many decades, the name Zai Gariyo was a dominant one in the public policy space in Uganda. Within civil society, it was a household brand. If you didn't meet Zai or encounter his phenomena within civil society, clearly you hadn't properly been socialized in this now well-known but lately fledgling sector. For some, Zai was a pioneer innovator, an inspiring leader, a man of many fasts. For others, he was a frightening figure. Nelly has said it a bit. A frightening figure, and named because he challenged injustice and had no space for mediocrity in the struggle for social justice. Whether in the public policy spaces, in research, he interrogated, he pushed back, but he also helped those who were open-minded. In the days of his prime, you had to prepare very well before engaging Zai, just like Richard has said. I recall one day, I gave him a call, and he said, and I told him, as we often do in Uganda, Zai, you are lost. His response was, where are you looking for me at? Are you on which street are you? Do you expect me to be on the street? Hope not. Anyway, come for a cup of coffee in Lugogo, a place where I met him severally at Uma grounds. There is a place there he used to sit and meet many people. So I met him there very, very many times. Anyway, another time I asked Zai, when I had joined NGO Forum, to review a small piece of paper I'd written for publication somewhere. Zai wrote back and said, I've read your introduction, you are too excited. Can you tone down your excitement? If you really are somebody who can give up, you would give up if you heard from him. Many times I would call him on the phone thinking, now I need him, but what is he going to say? So you really needed to be prepared to engage with Zai. But the reason I stand here is partly because of him and what he taught us all. My first encounter with Zai, and I will confirm some of the things that Richard just said, was when I was just beginning what would now lead me to where I am today and tomorrow. I was in my early 20s and got a first job after volunteering for several years with an American international NGO called World Learning. It used to do work in education. I was hired by an expatriate called Joseph Ntangsi. He was a Cameroonian, was then director of a project. If you look at some of Zai's writings, a project called the PRSP project, Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers project, that World Learning was quoting 2 organizations as partners. One of them was UDN in Uganda, and then the other one was Malawi Economic Justice Network. My Cameroonian boss and I arrived to the appointment time and were quickly ushered by the front desk officer into Zai's office, and he was waiting for us somewhere on Mawanda Road. UDN is no longer there. I think they are much closer. They are in Tinda now, right? So my boss and I had sent Zai an MOU for a potential partnership with UDN. It was 6 pages. I remember this very well because each and every encounter with Zai, you need to remember. It was 6 pages. And after Zai welcomed us, offered us a cup of tea, it took us through an unforgettable lecture about how patronizing our MOU was. He called his secretary and said, please retrieve for me an MOU from HIVOS. I want to give it to these people to see. So he brought the MOU. Meanwhile, I'm with an expatriate guy. I remember his salary. It was $78,000 at that time. I was with him. So Zai, I don't know what his salary was then at UDN. He brought us this MOU. And this MOU had 4 times the amount of money that World Learning was going to give UDN, and it was 3 pages. Just for us to see what authentic partnership could look like. Zai later sent back comments on our MOU in track changes. And his comments were nearly 8 pages. I'm not joking. 2 pages more than the original document we sent UDN. To this day, I cherish that moment and engagement with Zai. Not only did I learn then how to use track changes, but Zai's feedback was the right baptism of fire into civil society. The radical and transformative one that Zai was instrumental in laying a foundation of. And just for your information, Zai declined the money that World Learning was offering. He said, no, take your money. If you can't accept all these comments, just take it. Exactly what Richard said. And I've not spoken to Richard, so these encounters are now being corroborated. The title I have chosen for the keynote is deliberate. We have unfinished business in the quest to build the kind of civil society Zai dreamt of, one that would be instrumental in shaping Uganda's democratic governance. Zai belongs to a generation of civil society leaders and public policy advocates that we can only marvel in their footsteps. Winnie Byanyima, Warren Nyamugasira, John DeConnick, Judy Kamanyi, Noerin Kaliba, Professor J.B. Kwesiga, Mwalimu Musheshe, Maud also is here. Those are the kinds of household names we put Zai's legacy with. So if you think about civil society and the first name that comes to your mind is Arthur Julius Mukunda, Arthur LaRocque, you really don't know where this thing is coming from. So I am really happy that some of these leaders, Maud is here, are still alive. Some of them have passed on and are reuniting with our ancestors just like Zai. But really, this is why I think we should challenge CBR, the NGO Forum, and many other organizations that host leaders to ensure that we don't just give annual memorial lectures, but maybe quarterly. I was putting a dash here. I asked Julius, what's the opposite of memorial? If you want to celebrate somebody when they are still around, I don't know. It's a dash. You can fill it in for me. But quarterly fellowships for leaders who have made a telling contribution to development of civil society. Jane, Maud Mugisha, Richard, and many of you here should be celebrated when you can still listen, when you can view, and when you can appreciate. I wish Zai was here to just listen to what he meant to many of us. And that even in his death, his legacy still unites us. There are many of you I've never met in 10 years. If it was not for Zai, I would not have met you. He's not around, but really that is what his legacy is about. So let me go to the next part of my keynote, which is around Zai and the quest for a strong civil society. And you saw me passing a piece of paper here because I was consulting Maud whether some of the things I'm saying here are accurate. If they are not, she will correct. So as I said earlier, Zai Gariyo was a household name in civil society. Not only was he founder of one of the most resilient organizations, Uganda Debt Network, in the mid-90s, Zai was instrumental in nurturing many other organizations. From my recollection, while still working with Deneva, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, Maud, Jane also can confirm this, Zai started a public policy forum within Deneva that attracted interest from a variety of stakeholders in civil society beyond the members of Deneva. Some of the actors that became part of this policy forum were international NGOs and other non-indigenous organizations that didn't exactly fit the full membership criteria of Deneva. Gradually, this policy forum, from my recollection, morphed into what we now know as the Uganda National NGO Forum that was formed in 1997, but only got registered in 2001. Maud was also convening that space. She can explain what happened to NGO Forum at that time. And then in 2001, after the founding coordinator, Zedriga, fled the country in the early years of Museveni's oppressive regime, Zai Gariyo himself had left Deneva and formed UDN in 1996. He hosted Warren Nyamugasira, who had returned from Rwanda, where he was working for World Vision, and engaged him in some public policy work. And if you go to UDN, you will find lots of think pieces that Zai and Warren and many other people wrote about at UDN, in UDN archives. Then when there was an opportunity, after Lina, not Lina, but Zedriga, I don't remember his other name. Zedriga the man, not the one at Power, People Power. So when Zedriga left the country, there was an opportunity of leadership at the National NGO Forum, and I think Zai encouraged Warren to apply, and Warren became then the next coordinator of the Uganda National NGO Forum. To this day, the National NGO Forum continues to grow, but very few staff or even members would know the instrumental role that Zai played in its founding. Zai believed in a strong, autonomous, and people-centered civil society. In one of my many memorable encounters with him, Zai articulated a vision of UDN as a people's organization, one that citizens would look at as their own. This was his vision in his small office on Moanda Road. He was lecturing me. Whether he lived to see this dream is another matter. Patrick Tumwebaze, you are in my notebook, you can confirm. Because you are now the leader of UDN, you can confirm whether this vision is still on track. What is really important for us today is to ask ourselves whether Zai's dream of civil society being a people's movement and voice is on track. Civil society as a vanguard of people's innovation, to challenge state and government to be accountable. Under his leadership, UDN pioneered a community-based monitoring and evaluation system that saw a deliberate effort by civil society to create the necessary infrastructure and methodology for ordinary citizens to monitor the delivery of public services in Uganda, and create space for citizens and people's scrutiny of government performance. Today, we admire Aspire Sentongo's creative actions to expose the rot in our public roads with the pothole exhibition, you know that. The rot in our health centers with the health exhibitions that Aspire runs. These actions are not new. And if we had sustained innovations by Zai and exposed the abuse of public resources as it did, be they shadow works across Uganda, abuse of government vehicles. UDN used to produce pictures many years ago about government vehicles in the wrong places at the wrong time, overloaded with all sorts of things. UDN did these things that Spire is doing now long time ago. I will tell you why I'm trying to draw these comparisons. If we had sustained these efforts, perhaps the kind of theft of public resources as we have witnessed in the infamous iron sheet scandal would not have happened. So when Richard said they were coming from Karamoja, I was wondering whether they had delivered iron sheets. Now, while we get excited about the new forms of citizen journalism as we see Inspire Sentongo's incredible and valuable efforts, I truly believe that the real foundation for change in Uganda's fortunes will be in activism that is backed by organizing, as Zai had invested in. Online mobilization is great. We should use it. But we need to remember that even if you date some handsome man or beautiful woman online, at the end of the day, if all goes well, you need to meet them offline, often physically, like here in CBR. You have to eventually get out from the space and come and meet. Technology and digital mobilization has its flaws. By the time Zai was called by his creator, I don't know how many followers he had online, whatever the number. I would be surprised if it was anywhere near Sheila Karunji's 1 million followers. But Zai had more followers on the ground and not in cyberspace. I believe in this rootedness, and that is what we need to celebrate as part of his legacy. Zai was a courageous civil society leader. Courage is a rare attribute amongst our leaders today. Before we corrupted the fight against corruption, Zai was an icon, a trailblazer, and really pushed boundaries. I recall one time, we as civil society sought to challenge MPs from increasing their emoluments, I think in 2002 or 2004. Zai sent some of his foot soldiers to get accurate information about how much an MP earns. Off we went to the Parliamentary Commission, who denied us the information, despite the obligations to the Public Access to Information Act. He asked another foot soldier to go to the Ministry of Finance to ask if we could get this information from the Ministry of Finance. Again, the Ministry of Finance reacted like the Parliamentary Commission. So Zai convened a meeting. We returned with the information, and we returned with frustration that we didn't really have any information from these two agencies. So Zai hatched up a plan for us to go into the press with deliberately wrong information. We did, and put out an outrageous figure that was nearly double what an MP earned. It was deliberate. And guess what? Both the Parliamentary Commission and the Ministry of Finance took to the press to give the right information. Then Zai organized the meeting and said, isn't that what you needed? We got the information we needed. And the campaign continued. Now, what do you call that? What do you call that? Zai often thought inside the box when it was necessary, on top of the box, and when need arose without the box. I think this is what describes that campaign. Let me move on. Zai and Uganda's quest for democratic governance, which is the theme that we are talking about. Zai's work in civil society was not just seen as an end in itself. It was a means to achieve something greater. Citizen empowerment can be seen as both an end as well as a means. An empowered citizen knows their rights and can claim it. So that's an end in itself. But Zai believed that the struggle for democratic governance was not just about individuals claiming their rights, but public institutions serving not only the powerful or empowered, but everyone. That is why he fought to create space, not for himself, but for others. There was a time, Richard, you will remind me what these meetings were called. There was a time when Uganda used to hold annual meetings, bringing together government, private sector, donors, and civil society to debate public policy issues. I don't remember what the meetings were called. They used to take place at International Conference Center. Now I think it's called Serena. They were called? Yes, CG was standing for? Yes, the Ministry of Finance used to organize them. Yeah. I participated in some. They were really high level. They were opened by the president and ambassadors. The who is who of this country would be there. Zai was certainly ranked as part of the who is who in this country. But guess what? In one such meeting, when everybody was expecting Zai to go to the podium, guess who appeared? Zai sent a lady called Akelo from Katakwi. The lady sprang up, a community monitor from Katakwi, to take Zai's place. She spoke with courage and conviction, and the entire conference center was quiet. She made a mark, and there was a rousing appreciation of the brilliant articulation of issues from the ground that Akelo presented. Zai built capacity for future leaders. And I would be missing something important if I didn't mention some groundbreaking and shaking trainings that Zai delivered. A close friend of mine, a young and fresh graduate at the time, was hired by ActionAid to lead a project in Kapchorwa. He, like many of today's leaders, were trained by Zai. He recalled a training in 1999 facilitated by Zai at International Hotel Muyenga on people-centered advocacy. People-centered advocacy. This gentleman now rose to become country director of Oxfam, is now the global director for programs and political strategy at ActionAid. His name is Peter Kamelengin. He said, I must mention this because without that training, he doesn't think he would be where he is. Now, many of you who are in this space have such stories. That's what legacy is about. But Zai's contribution to democratic governance was not just in Uganda. In fact, the creation of UDN in 1996, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, was partly inspired by Zai's global leadership for the Jubilee Debt campaign that Richard also talked about. That led to a significant portion of developing countries' debt being cancelled, not just Uganda, under the Highly Indebted Poor Countries Initiative of the World Bank. As part of this, Zai and others championed the creation of a ring-fenced public finance facility called PATH. I'm just talking about things of long time. Poverty Action Fund, which was created, it was a fund that was created to deposit money from debt relief and to avoid it getting lost in the porous culture that we see today, with numerous ministers stealing from the needy people of Karamoja. So Zai went too soon because there is a lot of unfinished business for sure. Uganda's debt today, I was scared when Julius showed me the, I don't know, but let me say it, 80 trillion. 80 trillion. And every year, out of all of the money that URA collects, 60.3 of that money is used to pay debt. 60.3, and a huge fraction of what is left has to pay salaries. So how do you expect potholes to be fixed? How? Impossible, because it's just, okay? So we are servicing debts instead of, pursuing development. The brilliant ideas and struggles that safeguarded public resources at the time are not as effective today. I hope we still in civil society get inspired by Zai's spirit and creatively imagine something fresh. Let me end with two last points. The challenge Zai would present to civil society today. Uganda's problems today are many. They are enormous. We are in many ways a failing state. And while several of our problems are steeped in a troubled international economic and political system that is destroying the planet, driving social and political conflicts, runaway inequality, at a time also when the old system is dying, but the new is yet to be born, a Brazilian philosopher told us one time. We need to marshal the kind of courage and leadership Zai demonstrated to articulate local solutions to global problems. Many of the problems that Zai fought for to his death are still with us. Like Zai himself would say, and he said this phrase many times to me, the more things change, the more they remain the same. who used to tell this to me. Uganda's public debt that Zai fought for to get debt relief for, I don't know, it has more than tripled or quadrupled, I don't know. You know, Julius will give us those figures, but they are scary. They are scary. Wasteful public expenditure that Zai and Godba wrote about in their paper, Ugandan Taxpayers' Burden, the financial and governance cost of a bloated legislature, continues to increase. Both Parliament and Cabinet today continues to grow. So there is a paper Zai wrote with Godba Tumushabe. It's there. It has very clear recommendations of what needs to happen. Technology, like I mentioned earlier, continues to advance with both good and bad. The digital divide continues to widen. Taxes imposed on internet access in Uganda excludes very many people. The problem that Zai sought to address in his paper, there's another paper he wrote, thanks Nelly for sharing it with me. It was titled Technology Change and Gender, Irrigated Agriculture and Peasant Women in Eastern Uganda. The problems he sought to address in that paper are worsening today. Free speech and media that Zai cared so much about is muzzled. Richard talked about it. The Twitter space today is dominated by a certain general who abuses every clause in the Computers Misuse Act. But if you dare touch certain nerves, you would know what Amin said, that there is freedom of speech, but no freedom after speech. Zai's most cited paper on press and democratic struggles in Uganda, I don't know whether that's the same one Richard is referring to, 1900 to 1962. 1900 to 1962, Zai was studying the media. Is as important today as it was then. Like Richard has said, he predicted many things that we are seeing now. Commercialization of the media, co-option of the media. You know, he was a thought leader. So what are the concluding thoughts on Zai's dream and legacy? Imagine for a minute, and I want you to take this seriously. Imagine for a minute that Zai walks into this space. He's there. This is the excellent picture of Zai. It's just the one. When I entered here, I felt like he's around. You know, if he walked in right now, what would he tell us? What would Zai tell us today? So I want you to reflect on these questions and do an exercise on your own and answer it in your heart. Every one of us who cares about Zai's legacy should ask ourselves, how many public policy issues have we championed? Answer it for yourself. How many knowledge products have we produced? There are some things there. How many, if you say you are a civil society leader like Zai, how many knowledge products have we produced? How many young leaders have you inspired or built? Ask yourself these questions and answer in your heart. How many times have you ceded space for authentic voices from the grassroots, like Zai did? What innovations will you leave behind, like the countless ones we celebrate Zai's legacy for? These are not far-fetched questions. Most of you here have smartphones. Just go to Google right now, Google search engine, type your name and see what comes up. Then type Zai's name. Just do it, do it. This is legacy. Because 1 year from now, if you pass on, we need to talk something which is useful. So do that just for your own assessment. Google has made things, they just research on everything. So To reclaim, as I conclude, to reclaim and truly bequeath Zai's legacy, we need to return to the vision of an autonomous, people-centered civil society that is locally rooted and globally connected. We need to be more selfless, like Richard said Zai used to. We need to be more courageous. We need to innovate. We need to be aggressive intellectuals. It is that civil society that can stand the chance of reshaping Uganda's faltering democracy. That's Zai's legacy. Thank you very much for listening to me, and all the best in the next deliberations.
Thank you very much, Arthur. I think you have done us well. As they say in my church, otukoze bulungi bwerere. So I think Arthur has done us well. And it would be only fair that we transition very quickly into our panel. And then we see how to come to a close. I think this has been very, very inspiring in terms of looking back on what Zai stood for, what he did, how he made things happen. So I would love to, I can't find my program. Do you have a copy with you? Because I think in my excitement, I should have put it, oh, okay. Sorry. But what we would love now to do is really to go into the panel discussion. And the panel discussion really, we are not going to try and be too complicated. We are just having a reflection on a theme, you know, drawing from inspiration from a thought leader that has been there in our midst, still lives in our hearts. So that's the conversation we are going to have. And to help us to do that, we have Jane Nalunga, the country director of Siatini, Uganda. She's really, she is one of us in many, many ways and has been part of us for some time. Then we have Maud Mugisha. You heard her being mentioned a number of times, but I think having founded ACFOD, I think is one of the things for me I remember clearly about her, and many other things she has done over the times. And Julius, who comes from the second level generation of leaders, yes, is also going to be with us. I think that's what I have, but I have more chairs than so I think you better move the other side. So, yeah, so you sit in the middle, yeah. And then we can start. So what we shall do is really we are going to just have a conversation and really to help us reflect on some of the points that have been made by Arthur, really about what you make out of the things that Zai did and the work that he led. I know all of you sort of associated with him in different ways, but also are associated with some of the struggles that he promoted and wanted to see Uganda do something about in different ways. So really it is to get reflections from you, take a cue from some of the things that Arthur has put us. He asked us some questions. Maybe you can even do on public self-reflection, and we see what you have to think. But let's reflect a little bit. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to start where you feel you want to start, and then after that we shall go into one or two specific discussions. So Jane, you can kick us off. Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to be here. But before I go into what I wanted to say, I want to thank Nelly and that entire family. And I think they have challenged us. And as Asa has said, we have never done this, you know. And we have lost friends in the civil society fraternity. Some are not yet gone, but they are ailing. We forget them. We come here and we start saying, by the way, how is so and so? Then we say, oh, we are planning to go there. We haven't seen Professor Kwesiga. We haven't seen Anne, you know. Then we move on. Then they tell us, yeah, he has passed on. Says, wow, oh, it's really bad. We go for Gariyo, that's the end of it, you know. So I think Nelly and family has really challenged us, and I think maybe we can be able to change. I knew Gariyo we clapped for the family for challenging us.
For challenging us.
Yes. I knew Gariyo for a long time because I was also here for some time. The first batch of were trained here. We went to Lueza. I don't know, Josephine, you were part of that. We are trained in Lueza. I was there. After that training, I left for greener pastures. I went to Bank of Uganda. Then I met Gariyo in Denver. When I was in Bank of Uganda, I met Gariyo because I was on the board of Vedico with Livingstone Sewanyana, the late Galiwango, you know, and those are people whom we have really forgotten. So I was on the board and I came to the Denver board. And I found that time Gariyo was working in Denver. Very young, very dynamic. So we sat and he told me about debt. No, you know this issue, debt. That time I was conflicted because I was in Bank of Uganda. I was telling him, we have an entire department working on debt management, Edimo. I don't know, Alona, Edimo is no longer there. You didn't find it there, but it was there when I was working in Bank of Uganda. Edimo, looking at external debt management only. So I was asking him, what are you going to do about debt? Bank of Uganda has it, you know, don't worry. So we sat and he told me, he educated me about debt, about the debt, the injustice. He told me about the HIPIC. That time, I understood, but I understand the entire dynamics as I understand it now, you know. But from Bank of Uganda, I came back again to civil society, and this is where I am. I found it really, when I went to Bank of Uganda, it wasn't as green as I thought. Not in terms of finances, it's very green when it comes to finances, but when it comes to other issues, it wasn't very green. So I came back to civil society, and moving fast forward, Siatini, as you have asked how many processes you have championed, policy processes. Siatini, we championed the tax work. For Siatini Kenya and Siatini Uganda. When we started tax, we started it, people were saying, are you RA, what's happening? I remember the first time we advertised for tax person. We got everybody from URA. We said no. Nelly applied to do regional integration work. Then I sat her down. In fact, I first talked to Gariyo. I rang him. I said, Gariyo, I want us to talk about Nelly. I want her to do tax work. We talked with Gariyo for almost 2 hours. Said yes. And we talked about the tax dynamics. And one issue we talked about is the deficit in the economic governance. You know, every time we talk about governance, yeah, we are here talking about shaping democratic governance. We talk about politics. Politics. But we sat with Gariyo and said, you know what? We agreed there is a deficit in the economic governance everywhere, right from the local level, national level, regional, continental, and global level. You know, we talked about the tax issue, and we talked about that tax is not about, you know, revenue, you know. No, it's beyond that. And we looked at how tax policies are made at regional level, at global level, how taxes are, the taxes, some of them we are implementing, made by OECD, telling us the minimum tax is this, you know. And we discussed a lot. We said, you know what, I will talk to Nelly, leave her to me. So Nelly, who had applied for regional integration work in Siatini, ended up doing tax work. Today, you Google, when you talk about fiscal issues, tax issues, Nelly's name is there. And I assure you, on the African continent, the few young people who know tax work, Nelly is there, you know. So for me, this is how we worked with Gariyo, and Gariyo helped me to shape the tax debate, what we have today.
Thank you very much. So yes, everybody, I mean, these are inspiring stories, but I'll come back to you a bit about, you know, what is the implication of some of the things that were started then, because it looks like we have to deal with quite a bit of new, emerging, but probably even still old issues. So that would be something to think about. But Maud, let's see how you continue this conversation. I won't ask you a question.
Okay. So you said I start where? Yeah. For me, I would like to start right when I met Zai was 1984. So I don't know those who know him before that. And that was at Makerere. We used to share, I think, a class, one class, whether it's economics or something, I don't remember. But what I remembered about Zai at that time is that he always, you know, wherever, you know, in those days there were no mobile phones or anything. You will not alert your friends about what is happening at campus. But sometimes we would meet and he would be like we are maybe going home after the lectures and so on. And Zai, he said, why are you going this direction instead of this direction? Because he would be going for Mamdani's public lectures. So he would pull you and say, you must come and listen. And that is how I first, interacted with Zai. And at that time, we would just say hi, but whenever there was something very important, he would come to the social work department and find me and we would go, because I was also a very inquisitive person. And we had something in common. Of course, we had entered Makerere on mature entrance at that time, so we were more familiar with the outside world than the younger students. So when we finished Makerere, I joined Action for Development when it was just starting. Yeah, and around that time, I don't know exactly where Zai went soon after Makerere, but we met again when he was at Geneva, at that policy analysis forum, or when he was heading it. We were in touch, but I don't remember very well what he was doing at that time. So actually at that point, I would want to give a little bit background to the formation of UDN. Because sometimes when we say that Zai founded UDN, sometimes we don't know where it came from. But in the years 1993 to about 97, and then 2000, 2001, and so on, there was a movement in civil society, which was formation of networks. Because we believed working as individual organization would not be able to, to push what we wanted to do. So in 1993, we formed Uganda Women's Network. This year, we are celebrating 30 years. So so Uganda Women's Network was like, I can't say the first network because Deniva was there, but Deniva was dealing. Now when I even talk, I remember the first meeting we had on the formation of Deniva in 1988. 1988 with Musheshe and, before even Professor Kwesiga came on board. But, that is the history of civil society. But when 1993, when Uganda Women's Network was formed, many times I was from Akford as an ED at Akford. We were engineering meetings and going everywhere and so on. So I happened to be when Uganda Women's Network was formed, after the conference we had, which brought women from Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. Then we all decided that when we go back, we form networks to bring women together and not umbrella organizations. We say we wanted to form advocacy-focused networks. So when in fact, when we formed the Uganda Women's Network, it was an issue-focused network. We never even thought about membership. We said people would come in and go as, on different issues. But sometimes how donors force you to have, like they say, what is your constituency and so on. But in 1994, we were invited by Eurodad, European Debt and Development, yes. So at that meeting, because Uganda Women's Network, at that time, we had done a research on structured adjustment. So we were being invited everywhere, Minister of Finance, what, because we published a paper which criticized the structured adjustment. So Eurod had invited us, and this time it was issues of debt. Because if you read in the past, structured adjustment was also related to debt. So when I attended that meeting, which was, it was in one of those towns in Netherlands. There was Eurodad, there was Afrodad. Yeah. So after that meeting, we decided we were talking about what is happening in the different countries. And after that meeting, we came with, I think I was the only one there from from Uganda. When I came back, I talked to my friends, but we reflected about it as the committee of WONET. And we said, since we are focusing on structured adjustment, we had one economist working with the Women Finance Trust, Rose Chigund, I think she's in the US or somewhere. Yeah, if you remember her. Then we said, no, we need to talk maybe to Deniva, because they have a policy, whatever. We need to talk, who can now spearhead, debt issues. It is, and we felt convinced that it was not going to be Uganda Women's Network. And that is when we approached, we approached Zai, and because I knew Zai, we went for a cup of coffee, and we talked. And I told him about the people I had met, and we talked about it, and I said somebody from Afrodad is coming, and I said I referred Deniva to him so that when he comes, that is the discussion that we will have. So that is how the Deniva policy hosted Afrodad, and then Afrodad was explaining more about debt and debt in Africa and so on. And then to make the long story short, we eventually had a meeting, and in that meeting we agreed to be the founders of Uganda Debt Network. It was actually, you people, you need to get the list of that meeting, because it was actually not Zai alone, it was a meeting. We decided from UDN. By that time, we didn't know what shape it would take. Like, you come for a meeting, and then, nobody takes responsibility. And that is actually how Zai took responsibility. He invited for the meeting, and he took responsibility. And soon after that, he was going to leave Deniva. And he had no job apart from his research. So that's when he started UDN. We started UDN. We called a meeting, and we formed a committee, a board. I don't know whether we called it the executive committee. And that time I was on the board, I was the treasurer of UDN. And being the treasurer, I just want to tell you something about Zai. Zai didn't have a salary in UDN. For quite a number of years, Zai never had a salary in UDN because I was supposed to be paying him, I was not paying him. So what he used to do, he would do his research, basics, basic research, get some money to sustain himself and his family, but he would devote time to the work of UDN. Our first office was here at Yuma Grounds. That's why, he used to invite people there, even have lunch at that place, which is still there. So at Yuma Grounds. So I remember one time, he wanted me to do some work with Vincent Edoku, who was, I think, that time chair, so we volunteered to do some work. It had to do something to do with Bank of Uganda, getting information like you have been doing, because we had nobody to do it for us. So we decided, we did that work, getting connections, getting some information, and we wrote a paper. And then after that, Zai was so selfless. He said, you people, I'm going to pay you. We said, but you are not getting a salary. I said, you people, I know you are hustlers. I know you have family. You have devoted like 2 months to this work. You had to give up what you are doing. So I will have to take leave. So Zai paid us some money. And we said, where did he get that money? Because he had got money, for that project. But remember, he was not being paid. So that is something about Zai with UDN. I'm going to be brief and jump years. Then the next one was the formation of the NGO Forum. When we had discussion, Deneva was there as the umbrella of indigenous associations. Now we had Uganda Women's Network was dealing with issues of economic justice for women. That was our what we were focusing on. Then now we have UDN focusing on debt. Then in 1994, before UDN was formed, HUDINET was formed. HUDINET, we were concerned about with issues of human rights. When I talk, sometimes I feel so old because I was, and by the way, me and Zai, we are the same age, born in the same year. So we had a lot of things in common. So when HUDINET was formed, I remember when we formed HUDINET, we were seated somewhere in Makerere, beyond Makerere, that there was a small office, you climb up there. And we formed HUDINET, and I was on the HUDINET board as a vice chairperson at that time, until I had to move on for some reasons. So that is the formation. We were always looking at who can take lead on this, because we didn't want one organization to, just to focus on everything. And we felt that by doing that, it would also expand civil society, it would energize us. So that was really the period of forming networks. Uganda Women's Network, 1993, 1994, HUDINET, and now 1996, Uganda Debt Network. Then in 1997 was the NGO Forum. It was registered later, but it is a long story. We were even tear-gassed one time at National Conference Center when Zedriga was there. We made an attempt to form the NGO Forum. So when we called a national meeting, a national conference, we went to the conference center. I don't know, what happened, but they dispersed our, dispersed our meeting. And they didn't shoot in the air, but I remember there was some tear gas, and we had to run. And the issue was also because Zedriga was known to have some political ambitions, and for us, we didn't know. We didn't know, but the government knew. So we were there peacefully meeting, discussing, the police arrives and disperses us. Then we went away for some time, but we said, this is not going to deter us. Then we reorganized. We reorganized through the same committee that was spearheading the formation of the NGO Forum. This time, after that happened, even our small office, you know, these closures didn't start yesterday. We had to close. We had an office there, a small room on Ginger Road, near what we call Eso Corner. That's where Zedriga used to sit, and we would meet there during lunch hours from our organizations to discuss issues, to arrange for, you know. For us, like civil society that time was like a faith. It was really like a faith and a commitment. We would do our jobs. Then in the evening, even the formation of Uganda Women's Work, for UNET, we would meet at the Women's Trust. For other issues, we would meet like at, you know, at the NGO. It was not even called the NGO Forum. It had another name. NGO Forum was later. Then then it was agreed in 1996 that we must try to do something. We want a policy forum. We want an advocacy forum. And then there was even some resistance, I must say, from the NIVA. Not maybe from the staff, but it was mainly from the board. They were saying, why form something else when the NIVA is already there? Maybe let's expand the mandate of the NIVA. But, you know, and at that time, yeah, I think, Zai was still, in the NIVA. So he used to share these meetings. He used to organize these meetings. Because when UDN was formed, he didn't immediately go in full time. So when we had those meetings, there was really a lot of resistance, a lot of questions why we are forming another forum and so on. But we persisted. We said, the NIVA is not leading in advocacy. It's not activist enough. We need something else. So we'd have these meetings, and you know, as the story goes, but in January 1997, we decided to convene another big conference. I may not remember the date. That's when we first, you know, chose the council for the NGO forum. That's when we chose there was a council and then a committee. That's when we selected, you know, like a chair, you know, whatever followed. But before that, I had been asked by that committee to coordinate that launch of the NGO forum. And actually, I'm also one staff of maybe the second staff of the NGO forum, because I worked there for 6 months, part-time, coordinating, you know, getting in touch with everybody in the country. And we had a big conference of about 600 people at the conference center. And that's when we launched the NGO forum. So the registration came later because the technicalities were there. But in 1997, that was when the NGO forum was launched. And I want to say that you can see how Zai was leading in all these things persistently. And after leaving the NIVA, he didn't even have a salary, but these initiatives kept on going. Some of us would fall off and go to hustle somewhere, but Zai would remind us, we must have a meeting, we must do this, we must touch our pockets. You know, those days, let me tell you, we never had anything like sitting allowance. In fact, for me, I got surprised. Or like transport refund when you go for board meetings, or never. We didn't have all those things. We would just go for meetings. You know, as someone said, we didn't even have cars. We would buy new shoes all the time. I mean, for walking shoes. That's how we used to. There was no border. There was no border. I remember sometimes I used to distribute letters to call ACFOD members for meetings. And very few had landlines, like those who are working in the government. And we would walk. You know, those days, we didn't even have fat people, let me tell you. We were not as fat as we are. I'm telling you, we were just fit. We were very fit. Don't look at me and think that is how I have always been. I was smaller. So, I mean, these initiatives were just commitment, but I just want to highlight the commitment of Zai, working with no salary, you know, mentoring people, making sure that what you decided in a meeting was taken forward, and something happened. So for me, I just want to, I'll come back to you maybe later, but I want to say Zai didn't have political alignment. His commitment was economic justice for the ordinary citizen. That is what he fought for. He was so selfless in this, he committed himself, and he never counted. Can I say he never counted the cost?
Thank you very much. I think you can give the microphone to Julius, and as he takes it, I think you have helped us to see, because many people look at these organizations. Of course, some of them have either died or are limping. Others are thriving, but probably that is the nature of life. That, you know, but clearly you are talking about a moment where we had quite a number of people who were selfless, invested in starting initiatives that many of us jumped in and took to another level, and now they are, you know, other people are taking them forward, which I think is very, very valuable. And as you say, and probably that's why I think, as Arthur was telling us, to celebrate some of these people and their achievements is helpful. Of course, one could look at what is happening now and think, oh, maybe the impact is not as much. But clearly we know that when you look back, probably if there was no campaign of that nature, things would have been worse as we speak today. But Julius, you yes, as I said, you are on level 2, but of leadership, at least in engaging with people like Zai. So let me hear what your reflections are.
Thank you, Richard. Please join me to thank Nelly and the family for organizing this. I think for me it's really incredible to have a moment to celebrate the life of somebody like Zai. I know a number of people have talked about how he formed organizations, but for me is content development, the ideas that were on the table. And I also have my own interactions, because he gave me chair to distribute invitation letters around Kampala. And from there we had a bond. But in 2000, we started, because there was UDN working on debt network, but they had also a program on budget advocacy. And we felt that we needed to have more vigilance on budget work. And together, myself, Julius Kapwepwe, and then also Daniel Rukwago, you know, is here. We always, you know, talked about what should we do, and we started saying, let's talk about the budget. Let's talk about the budget. And CSBAG is an organization that was formed by program officers, by the way, because program officers are the ones with the budgets in organizations. So what we would do, we would say, okay, we're going to have a budget dialogue, called Minister of Finance and other people to tell us what is in the budget. And remember, those days the budget would come, the minister would read it. On the day he would read it, that's when even the parliament would receive it. And his decisions would take immediately effect by midnight. So by midnight tonight, prices have increased, you know, start implementing, and the parliament, that's when they would receive the budget. So we had the whole idea of how can we get the budget information? How can we engage properly? And I remember, so first, with Daniel and the team in UDN, you host CSBAG. So it is hosted there in UDN. Host it in NGO forum, it rotated in most organizations until we said, okay, let's have CSBAG as an organization. But before we did that, we tasked ourselves, we needed to consult among the leaders. What does it mean to engage on budget work? And I remember I was given the assignment of talking to a number of leaders, and one of them was Zai. And he told me 4 things. He said, 1, because we're trying to see the content, our scope, our work. And he said, you need to understand how national priorities are set and developed. It sounds so simple, but I mean, by then we had a PEEP, is it PEEP, something like that. whom are they set for? Who sets them? Who makes the contribution? It was a serious, serious subject. At the end, when you look at it, you find that actually there would be people who would sit in offices and design a national budget. Those guys were genius. Somebody sits in the Ministry of Finance and develops a national budget without, without consultations. So we felt, yes, I think that's an area we need to tackle. And thanks to him, we endeavored to ensure that we have a program on finance for development at CSBAG. The second thing he taught me was around, and even CSBAG, was around people, voice, power, and accountability. He said you need to change the narrative. The government must understand what the people want. And the people must not understand what the government is doing. So that you can be able to, to have sort of like a bridge on how you can meet both expectations. And because of that, we started looking around how can we ensure that citizens can engage in the budget process effectively. And one of the ways we did was to see understand the budget process. But itself, the budget process was not known. And we had the Budget Act that came into effect that opened the doors, which was very good. But information was not coming up. So our job really was to churn out information to the citizens on how they can access budget information. And this led to a number of people, waking up, questioning the budget. And we are not even thinking about taxation because taxation was so complicated and very difficult. But when you see today, the awareness around budget work, everybody looking at what is it that the government has done. Actually, I've been debating with friends and we're saying, probably corruption has not increased in this country. What has increased is access to information about corruption and exposure. Because in its essence, I was at the Ministry of Finance and I was told actually there is a cash room. A cash room whereby all accounting officers from all over the country would come with their pickups. The month has ended, they count for you the money. Put it in the sacks, put it on your vehicle, and now I'm asking myself, would all that money reach in Karamoja? So, I mean, that has, and you can see that this is because of somebody who sat down and said, this is an area that we need to work on and we need to improve. Then the last one was around an idea he really engaged us on was around fiscal governance, and Jen touched on it, around fiscal governance and responsibility. And that's where the whole idea of how government collects money and how it spends it is very, very, very critical. On the surface, I mean, you had on the surface, you have 52 trillion. But as you go deep, before even you touch it, a half of it goes off. You can't debate that. It's a commitment, it is there. You have to pay tax loans to pay back, you have interest payment, you have loans you failed to pay, but now you have to borrow and pay them again. You have domestic area. So those are stuck, you must pay them. Then Parliament can now begin to debate on how to spend the 25 trillion that has remained. But even before it touches that, around 6 trillion must have to go to salaries. So now you are reducing the envelope and the fiscal space. So by understanding that, then you actually find that we have no money. We need to see how to reduce. He told me that our insatiable appetite to spend. Once we are grounded on that, because we would hardly have consultations, then of course, the issue of corruption would come in, and you know how it was really very very strong opinion against corruption. And once it came to that, as we prepared ourselves on how to start properly, then I asked him, I said, you know what, we need to be helped on how to move forward. And he said, no, look, I'll do for you the strategic plan for CS Bag. So I'm happy that he did for us. The first strategic plan for CS Bag was actually developed by Gariyo. But the process was very traumatizing. But a great experience too. Because instead of inviting Arthur, Richard, the people who know the CSO sector, we sent him a list and he crossed it out. He said he put somebody from Bank of Uganda, he put somebody from Uganda in Ministry of Energy and Urea. And we were like, okay, these people don't understand the CSO environment. He said, no, these are the people who understand the public finance management system of the country. And even the discussion that we would have really, if you have not been grounded into that area, you would actually even get lost. But the product that we have today gets its root from those discussions that he was able to put a group of very high technical people who accepted to come for 3 days. We were running at 3 days. And they were able to help us put together a very good strategic plan that up to now, that the programs we do have not even changed, because it's a question of rolling them out, because there is a need that we need to continue doing this work. Thank you so much.
So I feel like I won't do another round here. Let me just open up a little bit and have an open mic available to those who would like to say something. I think you've had all these reflections. You didn't come here to sort of learn many new things, but I think it's just to reflect and say, what do we take away from this? For some people, of course, it's just about commemoration. For the people in civil society, it's about really the role of some of our leaders and how they have shaped the sector. Because some people see the sector today and think, oh, it has always been like it is. No, it has a history, and a very interesting history at that. So there is a mic here. You can put up your hand. Of course, Daniel Lukwago will have to say something because he was a young boy with a lot of energy, and all that. Yeah, but since the mic has come first to you, you can go ahead, and then Daniel will say something.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard, and thank you so much, the panelists. And Arthur, I have written so many things. I learned a lot, and I'm going to be more deeply rooted. Thank you, Nelly and the family, for organizing and for inviting me to be here. I just want to share one thing, and I think any other person has talked about it. My name is Elliot Olizara. I head an organization called Women and Girl Child Development Association, and I serve at CSBAG as a board chair. But the most important thing is, Arthur talked about PEEP. It was my first time to learn how to facilitate. Yeah, Christine was laughing at me, and I told her, "Hi, I can't stand in front of people." I said, "How? You will." Pillar number 3, Elliot. And they wrote my name. And I remember one of the meetings was at Nambole Stadium, in that big hall. And imagine I was working with NAU by then, and I was working with women. And the only thing I knew was training women on economic empowerment. And here I am standing in front of 100 people, and I'm talking about pillar number 4 of the Poverty Eradication Action Plan. And I said, Christine and Kechembo, make sure you evaluate Elliot. So I didn't know how to start, and said, you will do it. And the first thing he had to do is come and do a mock. I remember at UDN. Let me stand up. And then he says, stand up, come, you are 6 girls. You be in the front, tell us how you are going to start. Like, start? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine they were not ladies and gentlemen. So that put me back. I'm like, this man is tough. Is he teaching us? Is he a teacher? So I learned 2 days. Then the time I went to Nambori, I stood in front. One thing that I learned from Zai, he said, don't look at people's eyes. Just look at the end. I don't remember the faces of the people I was facilitating for 30 minutes. So what I did, I stood and just looked there and talked, and people like, you're amazing. I'm like, how? And then at the end, I think it was Vincent, because they said, we come for reflection. You see, girls, you did it. You did it. And from there, I mean, Julius told that the things I learned from Zai, and that's how I became a good facilitator. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Daniel Lukwago, and I and the family for this opportunity. As Richard said, I think I was one of the baptism of fire of Zai, because someone told me that there was an opportunity at UDN. So I wrote an application, handwritten, and still have it at home, handwritten. Took it to Zai, reception to Margaret, I think that time, and at Moanda Road. Then I got a call, as at 2 p.m., I got a call at 3 p.m. that come and see Zai on Tuesday. The boss says, come and see him on Tuesday. So next Tuesday I go. Why do you want to work? I told him I want to volunteer, learn about this organization. I think your work you're doing is interesting. On debt relief, anyway, as anyone can die at that moment. Then he told me, tomorrow come and work. I came and worked. Nothing written, by the way. For 1 month, I said, that's how much. Why should I tell this guy? There is no contract, there is nothing, I'm just, nothing. Then he told me, after like 2 months, I said, now let me go to his office. I said, Zai, things are tight, I need at least some transport. Then eventually said, he gave me some little money. I remember it was 400,000 that time for transport. Of course, it was more than transport. Then the next week after that, he sent me for a meeting where I found Jane. First time I found Jane. There are 2 Janes. There's Jane Naronga and Jane Uchaya. I don't know, Jane Uchaya must be now in Oxfam. I found 2 ladies at some hotel now, which is now called Serena. It used to be called Ranch on the Lake. So some of the people went, it used to be there, Ranch on the Lake. We had the seminar and we were talking about trade. And then there was a huge discussion. I don't know. I don't know why I went there. There is nothing I understood. But then the next week he tells me after 1 month, he told me, do you have a passport? I said, yes. You are going to Nairobi for a meeting. I said, I don't remember. Christian Aid, organized a meeting. Still, those things of trade. So why am I telling this? Zai, his approach, which I think all of us can learn, he was to empower. He never disempowered. There is no meeting he feared to send me. As a young man without experience, we used to have to go to Ministry of Finance. There were so many meetings. Zai never attended the meetings of that nature. We used to be a PMA. Jordan was a member of PMA steering committee. We used to sit in Ministry of Finance. That was the youngest with no experience. Sitting with the commissioners, directors, I was just... Then we'll come and tell you, what did they discuss? What did you say? Now you say, you see, said, if you go for a meeting and you at least cough, they know that someone from, because one of our colleagues, Alan, went to a meeting and came back and said, but Uden was not presented. He said, but Uden was there. Said, there was no one. He said, Alan, next time at least cough if you cannot talk. So every staff in Uden had to go for any meeting, whether it is organized where by who. Then when I got the job, he gave me a job. He gave me a book. It used to be a book. Now they no longer pub. They are now. It was the national budget. It's a huge book. Huge book, around, like bigger than the Bible, very small, around 10,000 pages.
Public investment plan.
No, it used to be a national. It used to be called the draft. No, approved budget estimates.
Oh, the approved budget
there,
estimate. Yeah.
big book. I think you didn't still have those books. Huge. Told me, Daniel, I want you to analyze this book. I said, we used to have a policy newsletter at UDN. Said I want your article to appear in the next policy newsletter. The book was so big. I don't know where to start from. Then eventually, of course, I started the economics and statistics. I went and forged on his, blade on his mind, because also I knew that since he's from the theoretical part of arts, kind of, I can squeeze him on numbers. I went and crafted some numbers from that book and presented a good graph saying, it's even there in the PRN, those years, 2002 PRN, it was how your money is spent. Some small analysis of two graphs. Said, this is very good work. Unfortunately, Zai was shot after 3 months when I was at UDN, and it took some time for him to come back to be able to. So by the time he came back, definitely, he lost a bit of vigor. It was not like originally he was, but still continued to push for so many agendas. Now, one thing I want to thank him, and I think Zai, he gave me a project to run, but I was so inexperienced. It's called we used to call it Budget Advocacy Initiative Project. That's where actually that CS Bagger comes from. Maybe it's a project program, but Budget Advocacy Initiative. I ran it, doing a lot of work in community, attending some meetings in government. And that time government, after the enacting of the Budget Act in 2001, government had allowed civil society to engage on the budget issues. Unfortunately, that time there was only one organization, Uganda Network, and one person, Lukwago Daniel, with a few assistants. But so, and they delegated everything to me. So I had to go for those meetings. There were so many meetings that time. The big ones, the CG, Consultative Group meeting, the Public Expenditure Review meeting, and the National Budget Conference meetings. What I remember very well, when he told me to go for the CG meeting, but I said, no, you can't go for the CG meeting. You mobilize 10 community monitors, you come to UDN, develop them a statement, we go there, present it at conference center. That's what we did. That's where Akero ended up there. We are the one who drafted the presentation for hand. Then, when the meeting ended, he gets a call from that time the late Nsibambi, and told Zai, you are enemy of this. You are number one enemy of the state. He said, why? How could you embarrass the government of Uganda in front of all these international dignitaries with your funny stories in Teso? We are reporting on the misuse of school facility grant in Teso. Said, how an embarrassment. We are so embarrassed and we are not happy with you and your organization. Then Zai told him, but Mr. Prime Minister, what I presented, is what is on the ground. If you think what we are is not correct, send a team to prove that's not true. The OPM definitely sent a team, and they unearthed so many things around that. So as I conclude, so as the meetings continued, I was also becoming overwhelmed. I said that Zai told me, if you can't do things alone, mobilize as Maud has said, mobilize the people so that you have a coalition to avoid being one person organization going for those. And the young man, I would be presenting in those meetings. After the PS of some ministers was finished, also comes. I was still young, very, very young. I also stand on the podium and give a presentation. The guys will say, this UDN is not serious. How can you send such a younger man? When is your boss? So anyway, I said, so I immobilized the members, like Julius said, Julius and others, and then we tried to figure out how best we can handle this problem. And that's when, I think 2004, that's when we got the idea of forming a network on the budget now. And that's when the real starting of the budget work. Of course, we continue the budget work, and Zai played a very critical role. under the International Budget Partnership, because I was a board member, I was able to actually first to do increasing budget transparency globally. They played a very critical role, which up to now, I think the International Budget Partnership is still doing that Open the Budget Index, which tries to examine how governments are open to their citizens regarding the budget.
Yeah.
So you could see that for me, even where I am now I left civil society, but I'm still there with one hand. I run a consultancy firm, but I also do consultancy here and there, including institutions like World Bank. What I've also learned from these other institutions, I think, which also good experience, or the work I've done with World Bank, there's something I've seen which you don't see when you're in civil society. In civil society, we think the World Bank is the problem. Okay, some people think. But I've realized the problem is not there. The World Bank implements projects in Africa, Asia, Europe, and places. Why does European countries use money from the World Bank effectively, and the money fails to work in Africa? Using the same conditions, actually with better loan terms. What I've realized, and this is something we have to organize around beyond the democratic governance, economic governance, which is also embedded with the also democratic governance. What I have seen in Uganda for the last 10 years, government institutions have collapsed. There is no government, I can assure you. Technically, there is no government. Politically, they are there, but technically, they have collapsed. And this is a fact I can debate. Let me give one simple example. The World Bank approved a loan under Greater Kampala Metropolitan Project to cover the entire Kampala and nearby areas in May last year. $570 million approved by the World Bank board last year. As we speak now, we have only paid the commitment fees. The money has not been disbursed. Why? The government has failed to put in place a project implementation unit. 10 years, 1 year back has passed. How do they blame the World Bank? We are dying of potholes everywhere. But the money is seated and you borrowed the money, you are paying commitment fees. Ask the people, why is the Minister of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs not working? They have no reason. There's no reason. Actually, when we inquired, someone told us the file is still at Minister of Finance and Attorney General. So this I don't know, waiting to be cleared. What is causing the problem, as I conclude? The file is delayed not because they don't have the capacity. There is a company which is, they are waiting to finish a project, maybe I don't know where it is located. So by the time they approve the project here in Uganda, the company has finished constructing roads somewhere to be the one to get these contracts. Oh, these are the delays, and I can assure you, the disbursement rate of the World Bank loan stands at 10% the entire year. 10%. Why? Incompetences within our systems. So you cannot blame the other side. So we need to, as civil society, to work, push these guys with the bagana. There is no way you can develop if the approach of government and people in government, forgive me if some of you are here, if you are still behaving as if we shall not develop, and then we blame others. Thank you very much.
So the only reason I gave him all this time is because he was trained by Zai. And he's saying many things. But certainly you are right, there are many things to debate around the bank and its role. Some people will push back and say Lukwago is conflicted, but that's another story. But also for me now, I'm conflicted because the Prime Minister has just given me a role to play. So I have a conflict also. But let's see, who else wants to say something about Zai's? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Who else wants to speak? Because let me see if they, Josephine, Christine, yeah, I'll take these two. yeah, and Daisy, and then the gentleman there, and then at the far back, because I want you to eat something before you hit the traffic, because Nelly and colleagues graciously. Okay. You wanted to start? Okay. No, it's okay. Baram will allow you. Baram is a good man. Okay. Very, very quickly.
So
and
thank you,
ahead.
Chair and members. First of all, I have to thank God for this day. And for protocol, I respect all of you. And I also have to introduce myself because you don't know me. My name is Isaiah Tumkirize. I'm a doctor of many things. But I want to say one thing about the late Zai. When you read the scriptures, God has produced such a people to cause change. The Uganda Debt Network will never die. He left it, it will remain in our hands and will live forever. Because God gave him wisdom. And you should not get worried about that. When I look at the family, all bright children. So God will not make people of that nature to do such a things without fear and favor when they don't have wisdom. The reference is Solomon. Solomon asked him, "You man, what can I give you that can make you better?" Solomon asked for wisdom. The Queen Sheba had to travel and see. If you read the Bible, I don't want to put in the preaching. That's one point of view. Another one is a commentary to my brother here. God created the world. He gave us all the abilities. He gave us authority. And he left it with Jesus when he was living. The power of heaven and earth is with Jesus. But in Africa, do you know what happened? We lack total healing and deliverance. That is in Jeremiah chapter 25 from verse 5 and so on. We have continued to do wrong things. And those are the bad things we're talking about. God is not happy with us. And even when we are not healed in that direction, he will chase away from our land. And these are the things that God tells us to do. Even when you go to leadership, God is the only leader. At night, we're in different goods. On Sunday, we're in the church. That is in Mark chapter 3. The centers of power are different. I am a scientist. I've studied many things in different worlds. But the point of reference is this. In physics, come. A goat, okay. We put this chair of equal strength. You are believing in God, you are also believing in another one. This chair will never move. A 50-kilogram goat put by another man of equal height and size like him, this chair will not live here. Africa's stagnation is about our faith. Many people believe in God, but for us, we don't have God. But Zai believed very well because he built a family, he has built organizations, and has left a very big responsibility for all of us. That's what I wanted to say. Okay. Thank you very much. But for me, I'm happy for him because of a family.
Thank you.
He did not earn money. He was volunteering, but he worked hard to educate his children. Yeah. I think for that one, we should cap him, and his legacy should stay because education is why we're here. If I never went to school, you wouldn't find me. This is my old OB. We studied together at one time, but I'm happy to find him here, so I hand over. So I'll come back, but I have to deliver a letter.
Okay.
And I'll come back.
Please go ahead.
Don't say I've escaped, but I wanted to say this.
Yes.
My friends, the mommy and everybody, thank you so much.
Yes.
God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
My name is Isaiah Michirize. I work in energy.
Thank you.
I'm coming back because we know why we're here.
Okay,
so
thank you.
You're among the people
Isaiah.
we are talking about.
Yes. Since Baram knows you, he will tell us more. Please go ahead.
Richard, I know the colleagues been talking about economic debt, governance, but I just want to bring one initiative which Zai introduced from his experience from governance and accountability into another sector of civil society, which me and you, Richard, have been managing, but for me, managing from a different angle. I've been more in public health than Richard in governance. But what Zai did, when I joined civil society in 2010, I was coming from the UN. And from the UN, you are coming there with a lot of airs as an expert. But here I joined the civil society, and I'm a chief executive. But the chief executive in the civil society, you don't have that experience. And one of the first meetings I had at Hotel Africana, one of the colleagues in civil society, the lady stood up, he said, "You are a chief executive?" "Yes." "You are talking about accountability?" "Yes." "You are not going to last more than 5 years in what? In the civil society." So I said, okay, what does that one mean? So I need some guidance and some kind of what? Capacity building. The only person I looked for was Zai. Zai helped me in shaping the organization, setting up, and I think Maude was one of the, I know Zai submitted even her CV. They were trying to work together. We started with Zai in 2012, like that. But more importantly, because I was coming from UNDP, we had accountability program, and I wanted to introduce accountability in civil society from public health perspective. Where we get this money from the what? From the for public health, for HIV and AIDS, is it working or is it not working? From a statistical point of view, we are looking at the indicators, the prevalence, the indicators are doing well. But what are the issues behind those indicators? So one of the things we wanted to do is to introduce accountability around those indicators. And one of the things we wanted to introduce was social accountability. And the only person who I landed on and after Googling was Zai, who understood social accountability. So I invited him. We had not met, and I invited him, and then we talked about it. So Zai introduced social accountability in 2010. We did the first community scorecard for the country under public health, under HIV and AIDS and the Ministry of Health in 2013 was the first one. Up to now, one of the legacies I wanted to mention, that it has graduated from community scorecard for HIV and AIDS and health into what we are calling community-led monitoring, which has been adopted by the Global Fund and PEPFAR, which funds much of the HIV programs in this country, as one of the community-led monitoring tools in this country. And that was I was the first person to work with him. So what I did was ask him to back me up as a quality assurance. So as of today now, I'm more or less the team lead in the community scorecard and community-led monitoring as an expert, but because of what? Because of Zai. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take Christine and then Professor Ichire, Josephine, and then Daisy in that order.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think my stories are told by everybody, so I'm not going to tell a lot of the stories. But I wanted to reflect on a few things. I think my life and my career journey was changed by Zai because I used to work in the private sector. I worked for the first internet service provider in Uganda in the mid-90s. And my clients were Geneva, Oxfam, UDN, and so on. And so, Maud, I just discovered, actually, I met Zai before you. I think Zai had relatives in Tinda or lived in Tinda briefly. And so he was a family friend, and especially to my older siblings and my mom. And so when I was offering these services, I would go to clients' premises and teach them, this is how you send an email. And then would ask, has it gone? Yes, it has gone. How come they are not replying? They will reply. You know, that kind of thing. Now, after I think about 3 years, Zai asked me to help to train the staff of UDN so that they have exposure. At that time, they were handwriting. He wanted to migrate them, to do some kind of electronic work. All of them felt like it was rocket science. But he said, I have some little money that I can pay you to subsidize your cost. So I took time off and supported. When the time expired, of course, I saw this organization had no money. I had my job. And so I said, I've worked like 2 more months beyond what you requested, so I need to get back to my job because they'll be complaining. My clients are desperate and so on. And so Zai did not accept. It's funny how naive I was also, because today I wouldn't accept the kind of offer Zai made to me. He said, come and we work. We will get the money. I left my job and went to work for UDN. And the rest is history. We migrated everything. We went online, everyone learned how to type. Now they don't even have pens, I think. But then that was a great opportunity for us because we linked up with the Jubilee 2000 campaign very well. And they had a guy on their side who was highly skilled and would pick you up however low you were in technology. So Zai referred me to a HIVO's workshop in Dar es Salaam. And for me, it was easy because I'd been in the IT industry. So there I presented about the challenge UDN had and what aspiration we had to build this broad social movement at national level as well as around the world. And they asked me, put me on the side and said, are you able to write that? And I said, yes. I wrote that at night and went back to UDN with $100,000. Exactly. And so I got a job and a salary. And Zai has never stopped talking about me because of that. But there were just too many innovations in UDN. He was an innovations person of all the products, the PRNs, the anti-corruption campaigns, the different coalitions. But I thought I should mention about the ability to incubate ideas and solutions. And which all, when they were hatched, he would say, I'm thinking about something. Then they would talk about it. Then say, call Maud, call so-and-so, and then let's meet. That was a barefoot generation because we had no money. People had no salaries. You would bring yourself, we'll give you tea. And then I remember the vehicles, they were complaining about emoluments for parliamentarians. We sat at UDN. I think Godba was new in civil society, recent graduate at that time, and he was going to offer pro bono draft. Exactly, everybody would offer pro bono whatever they could offer, whether coordination or intellectual support, whatever. But all those ideas actually unfolded into products within civil society in form of programs, strategies, organizations, some of which you haven't even talked about, like the Anti-Corruption Coalition of Uganda. Alan is not here, was at desk in UDN. The journey, I think this journey of UDN and the inspirer of this journey, who was Zai, has a lot of education, has a lot of things to learn in terms of civil society space, in terms of what we harnessed and did not work, or we dropped the ball somewhere and can still pick it up, and things like that. And so I think a story has been written, but for me, that's the perspective where I see that certain things could be picked up to build civil society. You talked, I think it's Richard who talked about declining money. Maybe that was Arthur. That was a common thing in UDN. We learned what was non-negotiable. Because with Zai, we declined money even from Dan Church Aid, but I think even now Dan Church Aid is still giving them money. Because for $30,000, they wanted you to open a separate account. And he said, I won't. And they came back and said, okay, we are giving you the money. I know with the DFID for budget advocacy initiatives, we declined the money. And when I was moving to Arusha, that day I was taking the flight, when Zai had said we are not taking that money, that was after he had recovered and came back to office, then I had to leave. DFID actually called and said, okay, we are able to release the money to you now. He said, I won't go. So I went on my way to the airport and signed on his behalf to release the project for Daniel to implement. Thank you. But I think that that inspiration and the character of leadership, which I think was extraordinary because he mentored so many people. And the people that were mentored all, rose in their career to admirable positions and lived with integrity and were, inspiring others. And I recall when Oxfam took away Kennedy. I think, Richard, you remember Kennedy.
Yes.
Kennedy later went to work for the IMF and other places. But staff of UDN, after being roughed up the way Daniel was, they became such an attraction to everybody, to an extent that the donor, now our donor, would take our staff. And so we wrote. Zai wrote and said, Christine, you deliver this letter to Oxfam. Tell them, how can you take our staff when you are the ones giving us little money? But I think that is all I can say because he still inspires us a lot because we espouse the values that he also held. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We can't add anything on that. Thank you very much for sharing.
Everything has been said, but I said, this young, what is it called, nestling, which flies without talking. I'm not going to, because we are here at CBR, apart from the executive director whom you represented, we the researchers need to put the voice on record as part of the CBR community. We are gratified by this gesture of the Gariyo family, Nelly and your siblings and your parents. I can see your dear aunties there. Thank you very much. This is a moving kind of gesture, and I think the culture of remembering, this is what Ngugi always says, that we tend to have short memory, we are dismembered, so we need to be remembered. So it's a moment of remembering, and we thank you very much. Everything has been said, and maybe the two sides of Gariyo. The one side of humor, positive energy that was always around him. He would tell us a story, for example, when he came back from Cambridge, he landed at Entebbe Airport with £1. And at that time, people who would go, when you come back, you're expected to be flamboyant and all that. And the person at the airport said, declare the money. And he put the £1. And the man said, but how can you come back from UK, Bungereza, with £1? And he said, but I'm here. And the fact that he always turned around situations, hopeless situations, into situations of hope and the whole resilience. And the other side that has been talked about, maybe the positive but thick skin. In this CBR, that upper room there, we also have an upper room, was the seminar room, is the seminar room. And in there, the battles of formation, the battles of ideas. What should CBR be? Should it just sit here and write, or we should impact on community, we should impact on Uganda, we should impact on the world, and we Danny at a certain point, and Gariyo would try to ensure that we have an open discussion on some of these things. And that's how, for example, CBR got that platform to impact on the land question. Yes, we are writing. Let's take these papers to Parliament and debate them on the land question during the debates in the mid-1990s. Let's debate constitutionalism. Let's not just be desktop scholars and academicians. And perhaps that's why CBR could not contain all that energy. It had to go out. It was like a volcano. It had to erupt. And it's erupting, and it is still erupting in many ways. Somebody talked about the children. And the spirit, really, we can say, the spirit lives on. The footprints can be seen. The footprints can be documented. And I think maybe let's get the culture of actually writing some of these stories. We say we have museums and so on. These are living museums, and we should actually be able to record and store them so that as a culture, as a community, as a society, we are able to be remembered. Thank you very much, and rest in power, Gariyo Zai, our fellow researcher, Senior Research Fellow at Center for Basic Research.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, MC, for giving me the opportunity. I'm called Daisy Owomugasho. I also had the opportunity to work with Zai for some time. I also want to thank the organizers, mainly because I also didn't get a chance to come for Gariyo. So when I saw this, I said, okay, now this is maybe my opportunity to come and pay my respects and remember the friend I have had in Zai. So thank you so much. I want to thank also the keynote speaker, the panelists. I think you've done a wonderful job. Although I believe that what has been said, I don't know whether it is a half, a quarter, or which percentage, I think there is a lot more that is remaining that has not been said. But what we have agreed is that I think this was one of those persons who extraordinarily impacted the civil society space in Uganda, and we will remain to remember him for that. I just want, I think maybe we are moving very fast, but I just wanted to talk about maybe one or two things. At some point when we were working together, I think there is an issue which came out. I don't remember whether it was the newspaper or whatever. The top 100 influential people in Uganda, and his name was there. So I just said, how did you, 100 people, do you know how Uganda is? I don't remember the population that time, but you are among the top 100 influential people in Uganda. And you're not in the government, you are not a permanent secretary, you are not a minister, nothing of those people, which people, or the positions which people would, I think, align or assign to power. So that was something which was very critical for us, and we would joke about it or talk about it even long after that. So saying that, shortly after that, we were talking, and I was like, you know, you've done this, you know, you've done this, this one is this. And then he called me and said, you know what, the challenge I'm having is what I'm doing and what I'm saying, I don't seem to get people following me or believing or accepting. I think we are here talking now, maybe it is in retrospect or something like that. But at that particular time, it was like, He goes to Parliament alone. Goes where alone? And the way you're talking about, it's in reverence, but it is also he was there up. And you know when he goes, Zai is there for us. Oh, he has talked, he has done what? But to go there and stand shoulder to shoulder, that seemed to be a little bit shaky. So he said, you know, there is the challenge I'm having is that I don't know whether I'm doing the right thing or whether my time has not yet come. You know, if you are in a race, I don't remember who was Kamoga or what, the fastest run at that time, long distance, said if you're running a race, a marathon, and you run and you turn a corner, you look back, there's nobody following you. You run again, turn a corner, you look back, there's nobody. Either you are running, you are lost, either you went off, or the people you are running with are not in your league. You are a Kiprotich running with Daisy, and you are looking back to look for Daisy behind. So he was trying to get as many people to be, how can we be in this race? Where are the contemporaries? Where are the people whom we can actually work together? And I'm happy to say maybe we are here, or we can take on the mantle. But that is something which got stuck with me. And also tried, actually, he's the one who inspired me to move from more of academics to the NGO sector. But also the advocacy bit was a bit maybe too much. Then I moved to the implementation, which was a safer space. And I think maybe some people were also looking for some of those safer spaces. But it's, I think somebody has said, now to revisit that, what more can we do in his memory? He sacrificed a lot. The shootings you are saying, the whatever, the abuse, everywhere. Why are you saying this? Why are you leading this? We need to take on that. The other second issue I wanted to point out is my last talk, my last discussion with him. I called him, and I was like, hey, you're sick? Yes. So we talked, and he was like, this is what is happening. And I think one of the issues he raised was the issue of our health system, which was not maybe helping, which was not helping much. And I think I could tell or feel the regret in his voice of all the things you've done, and you try to advocate and advocate, and still we have such a rotten health system. So we are here talking about his legacy. I think maybe those are some of the issues in advocacy, because when I say, where you're in hunger project, but there, are you going to end hunger on your own as an organization? You need to go back to the advocacy space. Government has all the monies, it has all the resources, it is the one which can do that. So I think today, as we remember him, those are some of, at least to me, which are issues which I feel maybe can still be taken up. He left a legacy. He left a lot of work that still needs to be done. And the one thing maybe we can pick up is his fearless nature, which I think right now we tend to hide somewhere here and there. Nobody. Yeah, so that one, that spirit, I think we needed to rekindle it in his memory and make sure that the advocacy space he created, we maintain it and maybe put it beyond. Thank you so much, and may he rest in peace.
We will continue the conversation, but I want we are going to have a closing remark and then a cup of tea, but we have one last speaker right at the end, a young man who has a lot to say. There is a microphone following you, so don't run away from it. Yes, after he speaks, we shall then invite a closing remark. I don't know if you don't need to say anything much apart from one concluding statement. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much, Richard, for the microphone. My name is James Muhindo. I work with USAID Domestic Revenue Mobilization for Development. All protocol observed. I never got to interact with Zai like all those that have spoken before me, but I have just been touched by the testimonies that everyone is sharing, and I actually hesitated to put my hand up until I was told, go for it, yeah. The reason I want to share is because there is a lot I have learned personally, and I think some of my peers or contemporaries that are here, which is integrity in the work we are doing. I think all that cuts across the testimonies that have been shared is integrity with which he did his work. When you do your work with integrity, you get moral authority to speak, moral authority to call others out, but increasingly in our space, this is also starting to fade out, where you find even amongst us, the absence of integrity denies so many of us the moral authority to call our colleagues out. And that's why I think he could even call his peers out and say, do it like this, or this is wrong, because of integrity. So I think if there's one thing we can carry from here is the need to go and also emulate the integrity with which he did his advocacy work, so that we are able to have that moral authority that gives you almost some sort of arrogance to speak with confidence, because you know there's nothing you're shying away from. So I just felt I need to highlight or emphasize the fact that I picked the word integrity from all the testimonies that were shared. May he rest in peace.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see one sentence from each one of you. Julius, what's your last sentence?
I think for me it's a learning lesson that we have so many of Zai Gariyo's caliber and character that we should continue to celebrate those like Zai, those that are still living, and even those that have left us. We can learn more and we can do better. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much. My last say is I just want to say that Zai hated corruption with a passion. He also hated corrupt people. And, you know, and corruption made him very angry. Wherever it happened, whether it was in the public sector or in CSO or whatever. So I think we need to take it from, to continue. I know many of us have been working on these issues. I think we need to re-energize the campaign against corruption, because it has not reduced. Although, as Julia says, information has increased and people know, and actually that is an opportunity because people know, and we can use that platform to still energize our campaign against corruption.
I wanted to go back to the issues, the questions which Asa raised. How many policy, maybe you send them around Asa, how many policy, how many knowledge product, how many young people have you mentored, what, I was looking at, reflecting on that and what Gariyo has said, and was saying maybe I also have time, hope so, inshallah, for me to be able to do some of these things, so that maybe at one time you meet and you're talking about Jane, you can be able to talk about maybe how many people I have mentored. But I think it's really, really important, that for me this is what I have learned. What have we done in our institutions? What have we done to mentor the young people? For me, I found that very important. Two, I wanted to go back to the issue Josephine has raised, the issue of battle of ideas. The topic was the unfinished business. the quest for building a strong CSOs. We need to debate ideas. We need to be objective. Daniel, when we go for tea, I think we need to sit and talk. Don't start talking, saying that World Bank is blameless. No, they have a blame. We are talking about responsible lenders, responsible borrowers. They imposed structured adjustment programs on us. You know, they are not blameless. You know, let us balance. Let us do the battle of ideas. Thank you so much. May Zai rest in peace.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, colleagues. I know that there are some people online. I haven't been able to recognize them since the beginning, but we are with you, those of you who are online, and thank you for joining us online. If you have anything in the chat room, maybe we shall read it when we are having our cup of tea. But at this point, I want to thank all of you who have turned up for this event. For us, this has been, as Josephine has said, as researchers who work with Zai, as people who have known him through the sector, this has been a very enriching exercise. I mean, to thank the family, everybody who worked together to make this happen. We are really, really honored that a colleague can be recognized and remembered in this way. So I'm not the one to do the vote of thanks. For that, we are going to ask the Uganda Debt Network, which has been talked about many times in these discussions. Patrick is the one who is there now to give us a vote of thanks and then a closing remark. And after that, you will be invited to a group photo. You can see we have many cameras, and colleagues want to see a group photo. Yes, they've taken individual photos, but they want a group one, so we shall find a nice venue and do that. And then just behind us, we shall have a cup of tea and a bite. It's a Friday, so you don't have to rush home. And also, it's a holiday. You don't have anyone to take to school. So, there are all nice things happening. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Richard. I want to stand here where I can see people. Thank you, moderator. But just to correct you, I'm not alone from EDN. I have my former board members, and I want to recognize them here. Yes. Christine Antongo, she's a former board member. Mujisha, she was there twice. Maud Mujisha, Daniel Pago. I have my former colleagues here. We have what we call Aiden Fraternity. I think they should raise their hands. I think they are here. I can see somebody there, I can see. So we are many of us. And I have my colleague, Gilbert Msing's. This is also in the Eden Fraternity. Yeah. I think if I have to talk about Zai, I can spend a day. But so many things have been talked about Zai. Maybe I should just give you a history on when I started relating with Zai. Zai started relating with him when he was actually here in CBR. And then he left, as you've heard, he went to Denver. And then Eden was formed. At that time, I was working with the parastatal and briefly in private sector. Towards the end of 1999, Zai approached me. I'm an accountant by profession, and he knew what I was doing out there. So he said, Patrick, you need to come and organize my finances. I said, why? He said, no, I'm seeing money in a tunnel. At that time, they didn't have money, actually. He said, you must come. I consulted here and there, and actually left my job. And I went to organize his accounts, his finances. I'm glad to inform you that when I went there, that's when the donors actually started flowing in, because they had the confidence that their money is going to be used for what they're supposed to do. We had Christian Aid, we had HIVOS, we had IBP, of course, DFID, and so forth. On that perspective, what I remember about Zai, on the issue of money, you can't play around with him. He used to know each coin in whichever bank account and how much it was there. You could not hide him. He was so frugal. Secondly, I think this has been talked about. People have talked about refusing, for example, donors. We had an incident one time, I quite remember. I think it was called Danida Hugo. Yes, Danida Hugo. They had joined together with DFID, and we were lobbying for some money, so they sent some Zungu, who came with that aura of a donor and so forth. We sat in a meeting, and he told Zai a word. I'm not going to mention it here, but Zai said, march out. Yes, he said, just get out of here. He picked his books, he left us seated there stuck. We didn't know what to do, you know. You abuse a Mzungu who's supposed to give you money. And the man left and went. But what is interesting, a week later, they called us and said, you know, how much do you have already on your budget? What's your deficit? We said so much. We had actually about half of the budget funded. They said, no, we are going to fund the balance, 50%. So that was how Zerso would deal with such kind of characters to get actually what he wanted. They have talked about empowering, inspiring organizations. There were so many. Actually, as I said, I joined in early 2000, and I'm still in UDN up to this day. We had that movement of anti-corruption champions in all the regions. That time I was actually still in finance, but I knew what was going on in the program side. We had Bushenyi, Kamuli, Teso, Karamoja, Rwenzori, Kasese. We were not in the north, Busoga, Bujiri. We were not in the north because at that time there was some insurgency. And many of these organizations we hear, even at national level, originated from Zai's ideas, and we really want to thank Zai for that. RAC, we've heard of RAC in Fort Potro, Rwenzori Research Center, you've heard of Karin Kasese, you have heard of TAC in the Soroti, and so many others. These originated from Zai's ideas because he felt we needed to have a movement of anti-corruption crusaders to mitigate that kind of negative expenditure. And it was not only the organizations that Zai mentored, because somebody talked about the CBMAS, because it is composed of the local people at the village level who we train, and then they monitor the service delivery and so forth. But in that process, because of the training, they were exposed. Look, I has just told you, actually it became as a policy, would say, instead of reading saying it, let the people say it themselves. And that's why it started with that lady who came to that meeting. Because Zai's belief was, if it is UDN saying, then they would say, that's the UDN, it normally makes noise. But if the person who lived the poverty say it, then the government or the powers that be would listen. Zai was passionate about his work. By the way, we continued working with Zai even when he left UDN. He first went on our board, if you remember, and then consultancies. In 2009, I think, if I remember, he developed for us a strategic plan. But what I remember on that, he had formed a small office Arthur, you remember his office in Naguru, up there. So he had sent me a draft. That time I was already at the helm. He had sent me a draft. And he said, can you please come very early in the morning and we'll discuss it. I said, where do I find it? He said, no, you come at home. And by 7 I was there. When I reached there, Hedwig normally said, no, he has rushed to the bathroom and you can be having a cup of tea. And I expected that being in his home, he will come in his shorts and, we go to his office, because he had an office somewhere upstairs there. The man came out very smart in a tie, socks and everything. I asked, I said, are we meeting or we have some meeting? He said, no, I'm going to office. And that is how Zai was passionate to his work. We climbed up and discussed what we're discussing. I can talk and talk and talk, but I won't stop there because many things have been talked. And also maybe to inform you that, before I start thanking, that with UDN, we have decided to make a publication in remembrance of Zai and also this activity. It's almost done, and I want to thank Rokwago. He put an input at some stage, but we wanted also to be here and listen to what's going on, and then we publish it properly. So we shall share it with everybody who's here. Nelly, I hope will help us to give us the contacts. And Nelly has a draft, and I think she said, thank you, this is something very good. So on that note, I don't want to waste much of your time. I want to move a vote of thanks. First, Nelly, I really want to thank you so much. And I felt Nelly challenged us. When she called me and told me, I said, in my mind, this thing has not happened before. Will it actually succeed? In my mind, I've already seen it in Makere, I've already seen it where, and I have not seen it in civil society. Nelly, thank you for being the first person to do such a thing in civil society. And I want to assure you that this thing will continue. I also want to thank, of course, the family of Nelly, Hedwig and the sisters and so forth, and the siblings. They are very, very crucial in organizing this. I also want to thank CBR. Of course, I'm not surprised. When we are communicating, Ned had shared a small budget which we are trying to conjure on and say, I will raise the money. And Richard said, no, don't waste your time. Just come to CBR. Richard, thank you so much for that. Just come to CBR. We shall hold that. And some people on the platform were a bit saying, oh, no, we should go to actually the hotel. And of course, I didn't see the reason there why. I was told we should leave here and go to the hotel. But Richard insisted, and Richard, thank you. The thing has happened, and thank you for that. I want to thank the keynote speaker, Arthur Leloc. He had to, I've come from Kabale. He had to jump on a plane to come here. And I think that's not a mean feat. So we should thank you, Arthur. And we shall continue studying you. Even if you jump further, you go to the other place we're talking about, we shall continue studying you for this kind of purpose. I want to thank the panelists who gave us some good words and made the lecture very interesting. And lastly, I would want to thank. Huh? Please, you clap for them. Lastly, of course, I want to thank ourselves, the participants. If you aren't here, then maybe this wouldn't be there. And I want to thank you. But before I close, I think as a way forward, we need, I felt so sad when Nelly was actually, I'm a finance person, as I said. I saw Neil struggling with the finances. And also that's why Richard came in and said, you know, some of these guys in society, I know them. They are struggling like everybody. So please, you come for a free space here at CBR. I think we need to find a way of how we should institutionalize this kind of work. Somebody talked about, they used the word fellowship for some people who are still alive, so that we do not have to wait for Patrick to die and they talk about Patrick when he actually is not hearing. I can give an example. Professor Kwesiga, who I believe is an icon in civil society, is actually now indisposed. We need to do something about it. So we need to continue this kind of discussion and make it institutionalized. I pledge my organization support to this kind of initiatives so that it continues. Nelly, once again, I want to thank you. You challenged everybody in civil society and keep it up. Of course, I'm not surprised. Thank you so much. On this note, then, I want to take an honor to officially close the lecture. Thank you so much. May Zai so rest in eternal peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, the photo will be taken right here. And this is the best time to take the photo because there is no sunshine, so there will be nothing to squeeze on your face. It will be all... No, it's here, it's dark. Yeah, just want to stand right here. We have a photo location. Don't mind. We are like... Okay, so please...